Cast out by the stars. The stars had once been the Thalrians' allies. For centuries, their shimmering lights had guided explorers, inspired poets, and carried ships from one world to another. But now, those same stars seemed like silent judges, watching, unblinking, as the Thalrian people drifted across the void in a fleet of broken ships, searching for a home that no one would give them. Kale, High Speaker of the Thalrians, stood in the command chamber of the flagship Seraph. His long, translucent skin caught the pale glow of the navigation lights as he gazed at the holomap of the galaxy. Dozens of worlds had been marked in red, worlds they had begged for sanctuary, worlds that had turned them away. Once, the Thalrians had been respected members of the Galactic Council. Their world, Thalris Prime, was a jewel of oceans and crystalline forests. But when the Tvoran plague swept across their planet, everything changed. Cities fell silent, millions died, and those who survived fled into orbit, hoping their allies would grant them shelter. They were wrong. The first plea went to the Kari Dominion, once a close trade partner. The response had been cold and clinical: "We regret your losses. However, we cannot risk contagion within our systems. Thalrian vessels are forbidden from entering Kari space." The second petition was sent to the Olaris Accord, famed for their diplomacy and compassion. But even they turned their backs. "Our resources are strained. Your people would destabilize our colonies. We cannot accept you." One by one, every council member delivered the same rejection, each excuse wrapped in the same polite cruelty: too risky, too poor, too inconvenient. Now, after months of wandering, Kale's fleet floated at the edge of neutral space. Their ships were failing. Life support systems groaned under the strain of overcrowding. Food stores dwindled. Disease, though no longer the plague, had begun spreading in the cramped quarters. Kale knew morale was collapsing. He walked the corridors of the Seraph, seeing the toll on his people. Children with hollow eyes clutched ration packs. Elders lay wrapped in thermal cloth, shivering from hunger. Families whispered prayers to the stars, though even faith seemed to be fading. "High Speaker," said Leora, his second in command, her voice heavy, "another council world has denied us. The Vayari have declared our fleet a biological threat, and issued a warning that if we cross their borders, they will fire." Kale closed his eyes. The Vayari. They were our allies in the last war. We bled for them. Leora lowered her gaze. Alliances mean little when survival is questioned. Silence settled between them, broken only by the hum of failing engines. That night, Kale gathered the surviving leaders of the fleet. Their holographic forms flickered above the table, each one showing the same exhaustion etched into alien features. "We are running out of worlds," Kale said, his voice steady though his heart trembled. "The galaxy has turned its back on us. They see us as a burden, not as people. If we continue like this, we will fade into the void forgotten." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then an elder counselor whispered, "Perhaps that is our fate. Perhaps the stars never meant for us to survive." The words pierced Kale's spirit like a blade. He looked around the chamber, at the weary faces of his people, and felt the weight of every life pressing on his shoulders. "No," he said firmly, his voice rising. "We will not surrender to the indifference of the galaxy. Somewhere, there must be a place, a people, willing to see us not as disease, not as exiles, but as lives worth saving. Until I draw my last breath, I will not give up searching." The others bowed their heads, their silence no longer defeat, but fragile hope. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. To the Thalrians, they no longer looked like guides. They looked like doors, locked and barred. The galaxy had refused them. And yet, somewhere out there, Kale still believed, someone must be waiting to say, "Come home." On the brink of extinction, the fleet drifted through the black void like a wounded animal. Once, the Thalrian refugee convoy had numbered more than 200 ships, some proud war cruisers, others graceful colony vessels. Now, less than half remained. Some had been dismantled for spare parts. Others had simply gone dark, their reactors spent, their passengers lost to the cold silence of space. Kale stood at the viewport of the Seraph and watched as a small vessel flickered faintly in the distance. Its distress beacon had gone unanswered for hours. By the time a patrol ship reached it, the families aboard were already gone. Air drained, systems failed. Another 100 lives extinguished. Another page in the ledger of losses. Food was running low. Rations had been cut to thin nutrient paste, barely enough to keep the body alive. The younger Thalrians grew thinner, their once shimmering skin dulled and cracked. The elders weakened by the day. Every time Kale walked the halls, the smell of sickness clung to the recycled air. Leora's voice came to him often, sharp but honest. "High Speaker, we can't continue like this. The ships are breaking. The people are breaking." Kale knew she was right. The fleet had petitioned more than a dozen worlds since leaving Council space. Not one had opened its gates. Instead, many had threatened violence if the Thalrians crossed their borders. It was not just rejection. It was exile. One evening, Kale gathered with a group of children in one of the communal halls. He often did this, not as a leader, but as a father figure to remind himself why they endured. The little ones sat cross-legged on the cold floor, listening as he told stories of Thalris Prime, of its shining oceans, the forests of crystal trees that sang in the wind, and the cities that glowed under the twin moons. "Will we ever go back, High Speaker?" one child asked softly, her voice trembling with the hope she barely dared to keep alive. Kale's heart ached. He wanted to promise her yes, but he could not lie. "No, little one," he said gently, resting a hand on her fragile shoulder. "But one day, we will find a new Thalris. A new home. A place where your children can laugh and run, not hide in metal holes." The child nodded, though her wide, glassy eyes betrayed her doubt. That night, Kale sat alone in his quarters, the weight of leadership crushing him. The reports were grim. Fuel reserves, critically low. Medical supplies, almost gone. Morale, near collapse. He stared at the galaxy map again. Red markers filled the chart like wounds. Worlds that had denied them, borders they could not cross. It was as if the universe itself had condemned them. Leora entered quietly. "We've reached the edge of the Perseid expanse. Beyond this point, no council jurisdiction. Empty space. Unclaimed systems." Kale turned to her. "And what lies in empty space?" "Nothing," she admitted. Then, after a pause, she added, "Or perhaps, someone who does not know who we are." Silence hung between them. Both knew the truth. Their people stood at the edge of extinction. If no one took them in, the Thalrians would vanish into history, remembered only as a dying species the galaxy did not care to save. Kale clenched his fists, his voice breaking as he whispered, "We are more than a burden. We are more than sickness. We are people. We deserve to live." And though his words were quiet, they burned inside him like a flame refusing to die. Somewhere out there, beyond the walls of indifference, there had to be someone. Anyone, who would see them not as a threat, but as lives worth saving. The Thalrians were on the brink of extinction. But Kale refused to let that be their end. Humanity answers the call. The Ceretha's engines hummed faintly as the refugee fleet crept along the edge of the Perseid expanse. Every console aboard flickered with warning lights. Low fuel, reactor strain, oxygen reserves running thin. Kale's people were stretched to their limits. Even the strongest no longer spoke of hope. The bridge was silent when the comms officer suddenly froze, eyes widening. "High Speaker, we're picking up a transmission." Kale's heart quickened. "From where?" "Not Council space, not Dominion channels," the officer said, adjusting dials as static gave way to a clear, strong voice. The words were strange, accented, but translated quickly through their systems. "This is the Earth Alliance vessel Dauntless. We are responding to your distress signal. Identify yourselves." A hush fell over the bridge. They had sent out thousands of signals before. Pleas for aid, desperate cries cast into the void. Until now, they had been ignored. Kale stepped forward, voice shaking. "This is High Speaker Kale of the Thalrian people. We are refugees. Our homeworld was lost. The galaxy has refused us. If you hear this, we beg you, please do not turn us away." The reply came swiftly, without hesitation. "Thalrian fleet, this is Captain Elena Reyes of the Dauntless. You are not alone anymore. Stand by, we are bringing supplies and medical teams." The words struck the bridge like a thunderclap. Not suspicion. Not threats. Not rejection. Help. Leora gripped the edge of her console, her voice barely more than a whisper. They're coming to us? Cale's throat tightened. He could not speak, only nod. For the first time in years, his chest ached not with despair, but with something dangerous, fragile, and intoxicating. Hope. Hours later, the humans arrived. Their ships were smaller than most council vessels, angular and practical, but they moved with purpose and precision. The Dauntless and her escorts approached without weapons raised, without warning shots fired. Instead, their bays opened and shuttles streamed out, bringing crates of food, barrels of water, and medics in crisp white uniforms. The first human Cale met was Captain Reyes herself. She stepped onto the Ceretha's deck with no guards, only a medic by her side. Her hair was tied back, her face lined by years of command, but her eyes were warm. Cale bowed his head slightly. "You are not afraid of us?" Reyes smiled faintly. "Afraid? No. Your people in need. That's all that matters." Cale's voice broke. "The galaxy saw us as a burden. As pests to be driven away. Why do you help us?" Reyes glanced around at the thin, starving Thalrians who peeked from the corridors, too weak to stand, too desperate to hide their curiosity. Then she looked back at Cale. "Because if we were in your place," she said softly, "we'd want someone to open the door. That's what it means to be human." Within days, the Thalrian ships that had been silent with despair now buzzed with activity. Human medics tended to the sick. Human engineers patched hulls and stabilized reactors. For the first time since Thalris Prime's fall, the children laughed, playing with small toys gifted by human crew members. The galaxy had turned its back. But these humans, strangers from a small, overlooked world, had done what no empire, no council, no grand federation had dared. They opened their arms. On the bridge of the Sereth, Cale watched the humans at work. His people were alive, truly alive again. And deep in his heart, he knew this moment was not just salvation. It was the beginning of something far greater. The galaxy had rejected them. But humanity had answered the call. A new dawn together. The first dawn on Nova Terra was unlike anything the Thalrians had seen in generations. The new colony world, gifted and prepared by humanity, was lush with rolling meadows, deep forests, and rivers that shimmered beneath a golden sky. For the Thalrians, who had spent years staring out of cracked viewports into endless void, the sight of a living horizon brought many to tears. Children pressed their faces into the grass, marveling at the way it tickled their skin. Elders, who had thought they would die aboard rusting hulls, now breathed air thick with the scent of earth and rain. For the first time since their exile, their people felt the touch of a home. Cale stood beside Captain Elena Reyes at the edge of the landing field, watching the first groups of Thalrians step onto soil they could claim as their own. His voice was heavy with awe. "I never believed we would stand on solid ground again. You've given us more than shelter, Captain. You've given us back our future." Reyes shook her head, her gaze fixed on the laughing children. "No, High Speaker. You gave yourselves a future by surviving. We just opened the door." But not everyone in the galaxy celebrated. News of humanity's actions spread like wildfire across the stars. The Galactic Council, who had once dismissed Earth as a backwater civilization, now watched with unease. Political analysts called it reckless. Military strategists called it dangerous. For if the Thalrians thrived under human protection, it would expose the Council's hypocrisy, and elevate humanity as a force that could not be ignored. Messages poured in from alien governments demanding explanations. Some warned of sanctions. Others whispered of war. But humanity did not back down. In the Great Hall of Novaterra's first assembly, humans and Thalrians stood side by side. Cale addressed his people, his voice carrying across the crowd and into the broadcast channels that reached half the galaxy. "They called us refuse. They shut their gates. They left us to die. But when the universe refused us, humanity said, 'Come home.' And so we have. Together, we will not only survive, we will thrive. Let this world stand as proof that compassion is stronger than fear, and that a single act of kindness can change the fate of stars. The crowd roared, voices of both Thalrians and humans joined in one chorus of hope. Years passed. Novaterra flourished into a jewel of life, built on the shared strength of two peoples. Human doctors studied Thalrian biology, discovering cures that saved lives on both sides. Thalrian engineers gifted humanity with techniques in energy resonance, revolutionizing starship design. What began as an act of mercy grew into something far larger, a partnership that reshaped the galactic balance of power. The Council could no longer deny what humanity had done. The species they once ignored now stood as a beacon. And other rejected, forgotten races began to whisper of Earth and of hope. On the 10th anniversary of Novaterra's founding, Kale walked along the cliffs overlooking the great ocean. Beside him, Captain Reyes, older now but still sharp-eyed, smiled as children of both species ran along the shoreline, their laughter carried by the wind. Kale turned to her. "Do you realize what you have done? You have changed the destiny of two peoples, and perhaps of the galaxy itself." Reyes' gaze softened. "We didn't set out to change the galaxy, Kale. We just refused to look away. Maybe that's what makes us human." Kale closed his eyes, letting the sea breeze wash over him. For the first time in his long life, he felt truly at peace. The Thalrians were no longer wanderers, no longer exiles. They were home. And as the stars glimmered above Novaterra, one truth burned brighter than all the rest. When the universe had turned its back, humanity had opened its arms. And in doing so, they had forged a dawn no power could ever extinguish.